Hey, podcasters. Welcome to Shaping Identity, a podcast for lived experiences with mental illness, addictions, and the road to recovery. Hi there. I just want to say how thankful I am for anyone listening. I signed on to my statistics website the other day and saw that I'm having more and more listeners, which is really cool. Feels like we're kind of building a community here. And so I just want to thank anyone and everyone who is listening. All right. Are you ready for some vulnerability? Here it is. Today, I would love to extend to this community some strategies I've found helpful for myself. I know that strategies are unique for each person's individual experience, and so hopefully this episode may help spark some ideas or recognize your actions as strategies. I know for myself, I've done some things throughout the past without even knowing that they were kind of classified as strategies. So I guess an example of that is just deep breaths, just something I've always kind of done to bring myself back to center, and I never really realized it was a common strategy. As well, something I've had to really build and implement into my toolbox of strategies are things that I can do outside of my comfort zone of my home or with people who usually help. So, for example, my husband. During Christmas, I realized that a lot of my strategies surrounded around being home or being alone with my significant other. However, when visiting with family for the holidays, it didn't allow for my comfortable go-tos. I didn't have a lot of strategies in place that didn't need my house and my things. I'm going to try and keep on track for strategies I use when I'm feeling anxious or depressed. And before I dive in, I guess I just want to explain a little bit about how my anxiety presents. Typically, on the outside, it comes out as anger or agitation. And on the inside, there's so much going on. My mind reels about all the worst case scenarios, what others may be thinking, worrying about judgments, worrying in general, a lot of black and white considerations of, not even considering gray areas. And my physical responses are getting really, really warm, a little bit sweaty. I even have these kind of, I would call them almost like tics. I kind of stretch my neck or crack my knuckles or ring my hands, kind of. It's hard to describe on a podcast, but hopefully you know what I mean by that. And a more condensed list of my depressive presentation is being dissociative or disconnected from what's going on around me. So zoned out, cold physically and verbally, and yeah, just disconnected from people or reality itself. There are more ways I respond to both anxiety or depression, but I think it definitely depends on the situation. And I think just a short insight is going to help in explaining some of the strategies that I lean on in those circumstances. A lot of the strategies I do have can be used in either situation of being depressed or anxious. However, there are a few on my list that are specific to one or the other. And so when I'm explaining each of these, I will try to mention if it's something specifically to anxiety or depression, but otherwise I use them in general for either. So I think some of the classics I've seen and heard of for years are the ones I'm going to start with. I've honestly developed a better understanding of some of these classics, as you'll call them. So, one, for example, kind of acknowledging and naming safety around you. So, you've probably heard of it as a mindfulness activity of you recognize, okay, there's four walls around me, a roof over my head. I am physically safe. I am not in imminent danger, and just kind of recognizing what's around you. I am sitting in my living room right now. There is heat on, there's lights, there's a roof over my head, and naming all of those things are hopefully a way of triggering your mind to understand that you are not in imminent danger. And so something like that, I do use it for both actually. It's really handy with my anxiety, but even with my depression, because sometimes I catastrophize. And so it's nice to kind of look at it that way and be more mindful of, okay, I'm able to fill my lungs with air. I'm able to grab a blanket next to me. I can have my water. I have again those four walls and a roof over my head, and that's the first strategy, is just acknowledging and naming the safety around you. Another one I have is those deep breaths. That is something that I very much rely on in both circumstances, of just taking those deep breaths to kind of collect my thoughts, really be again mindful of the situation that's at hand. It gives me that minute to collect myself before I react or respond. Because, as I said earlier, my response to anxiety or anxious situations is very commonly anger or agitation. And so, if I take that deep breath, it kind of is my reminder point of, it's okay, we can get through this, and let's respond appropriately. Another one on my list, and this one I would say is more towards when I'm anxious, but it's removing myself from the environment or the stimulus. So there's one example that I always go to is when I'm in Costco, I get really anxious, and especially when we're about to check out. So usually if I'm getting too overwhelmed, I can excuse myself and go to the bathroom or go sit in one of the like seats in the dining area, or I can go outside. There's just ways for me to get out of the environment or situation that is making me anxious. Another one, communication of feelings or expressing my thoughts. I mean, for lack of any other explanation, it is venting. And it has really worked for me to talk it out, because it helps me to process where the feelings are stemming from and what I can kind of do in response to that. So, again, if I give Costco as an example, I get really anxious. And so I can say to my spouse, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I feel like people think this or that they see this. And I explain it all, and it's easier for me to counter my thoughts when I express it out loud, because I'm the type of person that whenever I explain something, I'm like, I know this is silly, but blah, blah, blah. And I kind of explain it that way. And so when I start explaining it, say to myself, this is a little bit silly. Like, this is what I'm thinking. Like, obviously, the person behind me, they may be judging me, but is it the end of my world that this person thinks I'm slow, or they think I could have bagged my groceries faster? No, it really isn't that big of a deal in hindsight. And so, in that communication of feelings or venting or explaining exactly what's going on with me, it can really help in processing the situation at hand. I know minimizing is not a great word. It has a lot of negative connotations to it. But for me, minimizing the situation helps me to accept it. So, another one that I would suggest, I like to, it kind of goes along with the one I just talked about, of communication of feelings, but this one is processing senses. This is another familiar one if you've been in therapy as long as I have, to be mindful and, list three things you see. What are four things that you can smell? What's one thing that you can physically touch? Things like that. And that's another one that I really didn't have a great understanding of when I was told it many years ago. But now it's another way to really trigger my mind into knowing the safety piece, because I'm sure listeners will know when you're feeling anxious, your body is going into fight, flight, fawn, all those different options. And so processing your senses that are going to contribute to triggering the safety in your mind. I see blue sky right now. I see my dog and he's not reacting. He's just laying there. I smell cookies baking in the oven. I smell the plant behind me. I physically feel my cotton shirt. Things like that. Like it just kind of, it's mindfulness, it's grounding. It really helps me. And I mean, there are times when I'm way too overwhelmed or escalated to be in that right frame of mind, but it's usually when I can do one of the other tricks of like deep breaths or removing myself from the environment or stimulus that then I can start processing the senses and really bring myself back to center. Some other strategies I have visualization. The one that really comes to mind is one that my husband has helped me determine is so if I'm very anxious or really depressed, I really like to envision my dog running around my family camp. I get so much joy and happiness from seeing my dog run around and smell things and be excited and exploring new spaces. And then I also get so calm and so happy thinking about being at my camp. Some people may call it a cottage, whatever you will. Anyway, I my camp, I can like I hear the waves when I imagine being there. I can feel the sand on my feet. I can feel the heat of the sun. I can smell the pine trees and I can see the birch trees and it's just it's a great sensory escape in my head of this amazing place. And so I really rely on that visualization to help me in either really high points of anxiety or low points of depression. So I've talked a lot about grounding activities, so I'm going to kind of leave that point that I've written down. There's lots of different grounding activities. A lot of it is surrounded around being mindful, and just being present in your situation to, as I was saying earlier, kind of get that center, get yourself back to a calmer state. So moving on, I would say affirmations are a great tool for me to use at least. I have an affirmations app and I highly recommend it. It's called I Am. And I mean, I have an iPhone, so I hope it is available on other phones as well. But I use that, and you can choose how often it sends you an affirmation, and you can kind of choose what kind of affirmations you like, and you can personalize it a lot. And so that's what I like about it. And it always seems that when I need one, it kind of pops up. And I kind of forget the interval at which I set it to pop up. I think it's like every half hour or so, but it really seems like when I need something to affirm in myself or in my life that it comes up on my phone and it's really nice. And then there's two, like I have affirmations all over my mirrors in my house. It's just a nice point of like when I'm in the washroom and I'm washing my hands, I can look and reflect on some of the affirmations that really resonate with me. Yeah, like I don't know, I just try and really I always thought affirmations were really silly to be honest, and I did make a point or a post about it on Instagram one time, but I've really leaned into affirmations because so it's hard to explain, but like envisioning the positivity you want and affirming it out loud, it just really helps me to look at the positives and to have a different perspective at different times. And with that in mind, the next strategy I would recommend gratitude journaling or even gratitude brainstorming. If you don't have a journal or you're not a person that likes to write, there's so many different options for it. It's really cool. Like even I was looking on Pinterest and there's opportunities where you can if you sew or embroider, you can do embroidery gratitude. You don't have to do it every day, but you can just do like a little symbol every week that kind of represents what you're grateful for that week. And then at the end of the year, you have this whole thing of like what you were grateful for in the year. And it's a really great opportunity for anyone who feels artistic or likes to be crafty. There's the bullet journals. And sorry, I know bullet journals aren't necessarily gratitude, but I guess I relate it to the bullet journal that you can kind of every day you color in a square. If you had a really bad day, it's blue, but if you had a really great day, it's orange. And so kind of at the end of the year or even like the end of the week, end of the month, whatever you want to reflect back on, you can kind of see like, oh, okay, like I really was feeling bad about the year, but I have more orange squares than I do blue and things like that. And I know for me, I was told about the 5-minute journal a while ago, and I was really resistant of it. Just not something that I could see myself implementing, but I've really come to enjoy it because I'm a type of person that I will like one bad thing will happen in a day and then my whole day is shot. I'm like, okay, that one bad thing happened, so my whole day sucks. But the 5-minute journal has really helped me to shape my understanding of one blip is not the definition. It does not define my day. I can get a flat tire, but the rest of the day I got to do this, or I experienced this, and it was a great day overall, and it really helps you to look at the high points of your day and to recognize that there's so much gratitude to give and there's so many highlights, and it's just nice to pay attention to that. So that's something that I would recommend there. And I know I have a really long list, so bear with me. Some strategies I found helpful that I need to have access to certain things or materials or a location is the next category I'm going to go through. We just went over some of the classics that you may have heard before, and these are some that are maybe a little more personal to me, but I also recognize that I need certain things to do them. So one of my things is I like to go for a drive on a back road or a quiet road. I kind of live in an area where there's lots of farmland, and so I will go and drive around and just really try and take in the beauty of the area that I live in. Another thing that under this category would be splashing cold water on either my hands or my face. So even I've done this in Costco, in my Costco situation. If I need to step away for a minute, I go into the washroom, I run the sink, get my hands cold. It's just, I don't know, it's something about that temperature change that really kind of helps me cool off. If I'm really feeling really high anxiety, I will even splash it on my face. Another one that I have really loved doing is I take a lot of pictures. And so when I'm feeling really anxious or even when I'm feeling really depressed, I will look through some of my old photos. And it's kind of nice to because I feel like for me at least there I have so many pictures on my phone, and sometimes I take them and then forget completely about them. And so it's nice when I'm like feeling a little bit off and I can look back in those pictures and be like, "Oh, I remember when we went to the zoo," or "I remember when we went to on this hike," or "Oh, look how cute this picture is." And just things like that. They kind of just make me feel good. They spark memories. And I know, like, for me, I'm typically not taking pictures of things that are going to evoke bad memories. And so it usually kind of puts me in a better headspace of like, oh, remember that time? And on that note, too, somebody told me a little while ago, and I kind of forget who would have told me this, but I um I started saving screenshots or even just copying the text of nice messages I would get. It was a strategy that I used when I was going through raging pregnancy hormones and I was feeling not a lot of self-worth. And so yeah, I started saving these messages and it was like, oh, like if I got a good review at work or my friend said something really nice about me or my husband said something nice or anything, it was just I would write that down in this one folder or sorry, on in this one note in a folder I have on my phone. And so if I'm ever feeling really down, I will reflect back on those messages. And even if I'm feeling really anxious, I'll look back on those messages because Some of them are about my strength or my courage, and it's really nice to be reminded of that when you're not feeling so strong or courageous. Moving forward, I would say, and I know like this isn't for everyone and you can take it or leave it. That's totally fine. I am a little more spiritual. So I like to smudge, or I really love oracle cards, or I actually just got a singing bowl. And so there's different things like that that I incorporate into my day of if I need direction, I'll pick an oracle card, or if I need to like feel like I'm doing cleansing or just feel better, I'll do a smudge, or I'll the singing bowl, if you don't know what that is, it's kind of a part of meditation, and I was gonna try and mimic the sound, but that would just be too funny. So it makes like this nice like kind of ringing sound that you may hear in meditative videos or whatever. So those are some things that they make my soul feel good, and they just kind of make me feel a little renewed, I would say. The next two that I have on my list, I would say are kind of, I would say more towards when I'm feeling depressed, and I'll explain why. So the first one I have on my list is like hugs, either from people or even just with a pillow. When I'm feeling depressed, it's nice to be held or hold on to something. I will say that for me, this is only for my depressed states because when I'm anxious, I don't want anyone near me. Right? Like there's been times where I'm like super overwhelmed, overstimulated, and my husband's like, "Oh, I'll give you a hug." And I'm like, "Nope." Like do not, because it's just another thing to add to the stimulation. So, for me, hugs are very nice when I need to pick me up from depressive states. And on that note too, a heated or a weighted blanket for when I'm feeling depressed, because the heat is just nice, makes you feel cozy. The weighted blanket is I think there's some science behind it of making you feel like almost it's kind of similar to a hug, like almost having that effect of just pressure on your body. And so I would say for me, these are only for my depressive states because again, when I get anxious, I get really hot. And so the last thing I want is any form of blanket on me, especially one that is going to be warm. And if I'm anxious too, like I really hate, like I almost get claustrophobic in that I don't, like I need to have my legs be able to move, and I need to be able to like, maybe it's like a mentality of like I need to be able to run away, but I don't want to be weighted down, essentially. So, moving on, another strategy that I have, and this could be for either anxiety or depression, but I really love listening to comedians or my favorite podcasts. Actually, shout out to my favorite podcast is Crime Junkie. And it's funny because they're talking about really serious crimes, but what makes it so soothing in those situations is that they are telling these stories, but they're trying to help the situation. They're trying to bring awareness, or they're fundraising, or they're honestly just trying to do whatever they can. They've really used their platform in giving back to these horrendous situations that they talk about. And so I get a lot of good feelings from that. Plus, Ashley Flowers and Britt just have a really soothing voice. So, really recommend them. So, aside from podcasts, I will listen to a book on tape. It's just kind of nice to have somebody talk at you, and there's times where I'll put something on and it's really just background noise, but it just kind of helps me feel not alone maybe. And so those are some things that I'll use, some strategies. And then the last one on this list, I would say crafting. I really like being creative. I really like to try and get some of the ideas out of my head and produced into things. And so I've really started doing like embroidery and macrame and some kind of home improvements and things like that. And so crafting or repurposing items is just makes me feel good. Whether I'm anxious and I need something to just like zone in on, especially embroidery, like you're kind of sewing, and so you're really concentrated on that. Or even if I'm depressive, it's nice for me when I can create something and I'm like, wow, look at this thing I made, or look at, if I do a something creative or crafty within my house, it's usually a way of creating organization or making it feel more at home or whatever. And so that is even something that kind of helps me in a depressive state of, okay, like, look what I accomplished, or look what I was able to do, and brings me flashbacks of like when I was little and I'd clean my room and I'd be like, Dad, come look at my room. And so it's like you can do these crafty things in your house and be like, hey, come look at what I did. So that's always something nice. And so I guess moving on, so those were some strategies that you would probably have to have one or two things like a phone or a car or a way to get around, things to craft with, and stuff like that. And so my next kind of category are things that are more specific to my home. And so I know when I'm anxious or depressed, I love organizing and cleaning. That is something that just makes me feel so much better. I don't know. I think there's science behind it, but having a clean space really helps you in having a clean mind almost. And so if I'm feeling anxious or depressed, I will do like a deep clean of my fridge or freezer, or even somewhere that isn't clean very often. Like I'll move my oven out of the way and clean under it, or I'll go through the house and sanitize everything and stuff like that. I'll wash my bedding because there's nothing better sometimes, like if you're depressed or anxious and you get into a freshly made bed. The trick with that is that I need to set timers because otherwise I will be that typical, like, it's in the wash and then you go to bed and you're like, oh, I have no bedding on my bed. So I always have to set timers for that. But it is nice to go into a fresh, clean, soft bed. I love it. I'll review items and make lists. I really like making lists of either things that I need. So if I went through like my pantry or fridge, but also things that I need, like, oh, if I had a container here, it would help me organize this better and stuff like that. So I really like to declutter and, collect things that need to be donated and put it in one area and put garbage in another area and then put things that need to go upstairs or downstairs in this area and stuff like that. And so I have a whole process to organizing and cleaning. And there's even been situations where I've been at my sister's house and I'm super anxious or depressed and I start cleaning her house. And I always tell her, I'm like, it's not about you. This is about me. I just need something to do, keep me busy, and just, it just makes me feel better when I clean and organize things. Another thing kind of more specific to my house is petting my dog or spending time with my dog. I love any dogs really, but my dog obviously love him more. Um, Another thing, I love bubble baths, or like an Epsom salt bath. Those are always really great. And plus I have a window next to mine that it almost feels like a hot tub in the winter, which I love. Kind of open the window a crack and let the cool air in and sit in a nice hot bath. If it's summer out, I love to sunbathe. If I'm feeling kind of bad about myself, or again, just kind of need things to be more orderly, I'll do my hair, do my makeup, do my nails, things like that. It kind of just gives me a little bit of a pick me up. In the summer, I will attempt to garden. I will admit I am the least like green thumb person. Any plant I have usually will die, except for this one spider plant that I have that just is thriving and living its best life. But other than that, I do try and garden and try and take care of my yard. And I know like sometimes doing something that is a little more difficult can also be a little therapeutic, and so that's my thing. And then another thing with my dog, I just love taking him to hopefully I can say this without him freaking out, going to the park or going for a walk. I just really love, as I was saying earlier when I was talking about my visualization, I love seeing him run around. I love seeing him happy and smelling new things and coming back to me to be like, Mom, did you see that? Or, and it's just, I really love those moments. So they can really reduce some anxiety or pick up my mood. And I guess my last category is just kind of more of a general list. So I know for me, going for a walk or getting fresh air or walking or standing barefoot in the grass, doing some writing, or like I really like writing poetry. So I use that to kind of get some of the mess out of my mind and try and articulate what goes on in my head sometimes. I really like doing micro steps. I talked about it in another episode of just making things more bite size and making it just easier to accomplish. And so, on that note, I really like making easy checklists if I'm feeling anxious or depressed. Even putting on there, brush my hair, empty the dishwasher, or like eat breakfast, things like that. Like, and it can be as hard or easy as you like. It depends on the day, but just there's something about it, another science thing that I don't know, but checking boxes or crossing off things on a list, it just feels really, really good. For me too, like if I just got paid, maybe I'll go visit my favorite store. For me, that's usually like a bookstore or something local, or even I love going to pet stores and just looking at pets. I mean, dogs are my number one, but I love looking at like ferrets or even reptiles. They're really cool. Or if I am bound to my house, I like scrolling through my favorite apps, or even pages. So like on for apps, I really like looking at Pinterest. Another app is Instagram, and I love looking at the different profiles. I did mention one of my favorites in one of my last episodes. And so it's nice when you can look at different Instagram pages and you don't feel so alone and you kind of feel like, oh, okay, we can find humor in this. Or it's just nice to be able to see how somebody else has expressed something and you can be like, "Oh my God, me too." Like I get that. And so I really love doing that. If I have any disposable income, I like going and treating myself to a beverage or snack. I am definitely that meme of something good happens, I get myself a snack. Something bad happens, I get myself a snack. That's just something that makes me feel better. And so if it works, I'm gonna do it. And some of the final ones I have listed here that like I don't do super often, but they have made me feel better, so I feel like they're worth mentioning. But one of them is imagining or brainstorming long-term goals. So just an example, if I wanted to say, "Oh, I really want to travel this year," then I can kind of brainstorm like, okay, how much money do I need to save? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to go with? And things like that. And just kind of that thought process and getting my mind off of my current situation helps me to kind of just get out of that situation and get out of that mentality. I can look forward to something, or I can plan something, or ask myself questions that pertain to anything else other than what's currently going on. Another one that I've done in the past is making a donation or contributing to an organization or person that may be in need. So there are times that I have either donated a monetary value or my time to a cause because it just makes me feel good when I can do something for another person. And it really kind of brings down some of my anxiety to focus on something else and to feel like I am making a difference or feel like I'm using my day or my time or any excess funds towards good. And so those are just a couple of things, but I know I've given you a really long list and I apologize. I know it wasn't very um story based. It was very like, then this, then this, then this. But I hope that there was something in here that you may have resonated with. These are just my personal strategies for handling depression or anxiety. And despite how long I've been talking, this list isn't exhaustive. I know that it sounds like it. There are so many that I likely missed, or maybe that I don't even know about yet. And that's why I would love to hear what some of your strategies are. I am going to make a post on Instagram the morning of the release of this episode. And I'd love your engagement in building this list for myself and others. My Instagram is shaping_identity. And I'd just love if you'd give me a follow so that we can learn and grow together. I think this is all I have to give today. I appreciate you being present and being here for this journey. If you like shaping identity, please do me a big, big favor and rate, share, comment, save anything you can to help build our little community here. Shaping Identity is available wherever you stream your podcasts. This is me signing off with a vulnerability hangover. Interested in hearing another podcast supported by Titan Media Collective? Take a listen to this 30-second promo.
Hey guys, this is B from Arbitrary Advice, your one-stop shop for advice, arbitrary and otherwise. We talk about anything and everything, from serious issues to internet challenges and life hacks. Have a question or topic you want covered? I'm available through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or email me at arbitraryadvicepodcast@gmail.com. My mission is to help people through their challenges, no matter the size. New episodes every Sunday and available anywhere you listen to podcasts.